Okay, so what I'm thinking here, looking at our possible inputs, if we were to take none or an empty matrix as an input, we would return 0 because for sure there would be no islands in this case. But we could also have this as an input. So what I'm thinking here is we start at the first element, that's a 1. So I'll probably want some sort of island counter variable, and I'll initialize that there and increment it by 1. And then I get to the 0, and that's not part of any island, so I don't need to do anything there, and I get to this next element right here. So that's actually part of the same island. So I need to keep track of what ones are part of the same island. Maybe what I could do is I could look at the elements on top and on bottom and then check if they're part of the same island and then keep track of that somehow.
Yeah, no, that's the right approach. But if you're looking at that first element, for example, there's another one below it, but there's nothing above it. So what would you do in that case?
Oh, right, because since there's not a 1 above that, we'd probably get some sort of runtime error. So first I'd want to make sure to check that there's actually an element there before I check if it's a 1 or 0. So I'm going to need to keep track of this somehow. Maybe this is some sort of data structure?
Yeah, does this approach or the problem or anything you've been walking through remind you of anything?
Yeah, since this matrix can sort of be like represented as a graph, this might be a breadth-first search problem. So what I could do is when I find the first one, I could look at the elements around it, and I could add those elements to a queue, check if those are 1s, and then if they're 1s, I could set them to another number, so they're marked as visited, and then I could keep going.
Yeah, that sounds really great.
Right.
So it looks like his test cases came in handy when brainstorming his solution.
Sure did.
He was able to use test cases to inch his way towards developing a solution. Something else I noticed was that he had great communication with the interviewer. He took the interviewer's cues to guide him towards the correct solution.
Yeah, a big misconception that future interviewees can have is they think that their interviewer isn't on their side. But really the interviewer is there to help you, and being able to take in their feedback demonstrates your teamwork skills. Not to mention it helps you solve the problem. Sometimes an interviewee might get so nervous that he or she just completely ignores the interviewer's suggestions. This can be a big turnoff for the interviewers.
So what if the interviewee was still stuck after looking at his test cases and edge cases?
Well, one thing the interviewee mentioned was that this problem reminded him of the breadth-first search algorithm. Often if an interviewee is stuck on a certain portion of the problem, they can begin to brainstorm algorithms and data structures. The interviewee may have noticed that a graph can be represented as a matrix, and that a breadth-first search algorithm would fit here.